time for ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky and Dan's segment brought to you by Ellicott Hotels. Fans, round up your family, friends, or coworkers for a fantastic game day experience at 500 Pearl. Reserve your pack and book your group event today at 500pearlbuffalo.com. All right, Dan, we're going to put a bow on the Week 3 game against Washington. And I know you're always dicing up the offensive tape, but the Bills' defensive performance on Sunday made Sam Howell look like all the other young quarterbacks that seem to face a Sean McDermott defense. They don't fare well. 3 touchdowns, 20 interceptions in 9 games, and a passer rating of 44. And, Howell had 5 turnovers. It was not a pretty scene.
Yeah, I think the big thing was they did a really good job of winning first downs, and part of that was, I think I said this in the Raiders game with their defense, how dominant it felt Ed Oliver played, especially on early downs. And it's really interesting because if, I look at Buffalo's defense, and I've said this every single time I'm on defense, and I've said you cannot judge them until Vaughn comes back. And the more that I've watched Ed play internally this year, you sit there and go, if they get that Ed Oliver on a relatively consistent basis on early downs and Vaughn comes back, that's going to be huge. So, getting in those early down successful situations to allow some of that zone coverage to be a big part of the plan and allow that pass rush to kind of be an integral thing. Bernard is doing a really good job in coverage. You can make the case that they have the best, or certainly one of the best pass covering linebacker duos in football. And I think everyone knows my feelings on the run defense when it comes to those two guys, and where they're vulnerable and or susceptible in that regard. But pass coverage wise, those guys are doing such a good job of playing off each other. And so Tre'Davious' interception was fantastic as well, just the athletic play to jump over the back. So, if that defense can win consistently on early downs and then some of those simulated pressures that they're kind of picking, or the fire zones that they're playing with, it's only going to help their offense try to get as many kind of possessions as possible.
We talked about this game that happened last year, week 14. So it was late in the year, and it was before the Damar Hamlin incident in Cincinnati. So both these teams were you knew their identity and what they were going to look like. It turns out to be a 29-29 game. Bills get the ball, go down and kick a field goal, 32-29 to win it at the end. That's kind of what I expect in this one. Hard to keep both clubs off the scoreboard to a great degree, but I think this is going to be a division game that kind of comes down to it. I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean, certainly 2 of the best teams in football, having the opportunity to play against each other. The way I look at this one, Steve, is first of all, when the Bills have the ball on offense, the reality is this: they are the best play action pass offense in football. And last week, they went and brought 6 offensive linemen in, and they ran play action pass. And I think that does wonders for everybody on their offense. And so I think the more that they are willing to do that, and willing to try to kind of control some of the pressures that Miami's defense is going to bring, is going to be a huge story. Vic Fangio is bringing pressures all over the place right now for Miami's defense. You see double corners coming on first down, double corners on first down. So, the more that you could put a quarterback under center and have, a couple more people, at least initially of the play, in the protection plan, the more comfortable you feel as a guy. The more that Josh can get to the line of scrimmage and be like, I don't have to know exactly what the protection issue is because we got 7 for 7. And those guys, it may not be perfect every time, but we got a guy for a guy type of thing instead of standing there and trying to analyze everything. So you guys know I've been so outspoken about putting him under center and play action. So not only just Josh's performance, but I think everybody's to be able to handle some of the early down kind of unique pressures that Vic will bring. The second thing is Josh, more than likely 4 times in this game, is going to get all out blitz. It's going to come. And who wins those 3 or 4 snaps is going to determine in great deal kind of who wins the game. Because if Miami, kind of like what happened in Cincinnati with Monday Night Football, if Miami pitches a shutout, that you're stuck as an offense. And if you hurt them, you got a great advantage. And then I think for the Bills defense, who I have a ton of respect for, I just talked about, I think they're phenomenal right now. Miami's offense is almost impossible to stop in my eyes. You can't play man because of the vertical speed and the way they motion and get Tyreek running full speed. It scares you to death. And you can't play zone because what they do, guys, and I'm going on a long time here, but I want to kind of paint the picture for everybody. I want everyone to think of an accordion, right? The vertical speed, you have to play deep as the top end of your defense. Your secondary, your safeties, they have to play a little bit abnormally deep because of that speed. And so now this accordion is kind of stretched out before the ball ever really gets snapped. And then they give the second level of defenders, Milano and Bernard and a Taron Johnson, they give those second level guys so much to see, both horizontally with the motions or a guy coming across the formation after the snap, and vertically when it comes to okay, ball fake at me, that those guys, if you watch the Broncos defense on run plays, so often they were going backwards, and on pass plays, so often they were standing still. And that's how they create some of those massive gaps in kind of that second to third level of your defense, that 20-yard world. And I think it's a really difficult defense or offense to even philosophically have a plan for.
Yeah, and even Coach McDermott, who was only beginning to dive into the film yesterday when he addressed the media, called the Dolphins' offense revolutionary, which I thought was a very, very complimentary description for Mike McDaniel. And it is going to be interesting because it is quite literally Mike McDaniel and Sean McDermott going head-to-head in this game, offense versus defense, in terms of two play callers that have been very good at what they do. You mentioned, possibly blitzing Allen. Josh is no stranger to getting blitzed by Dolphins defenses. The previous coordinator probably did it too much, and Josh makes you pay. You blitz Josh, it's a mistake. History has proven that, and his passer rating is through the roof when you bring pressure on him. So, okay, it might be, with some measure of, trying to be balanced in what they want to do defensively. I'm talking about Miami here. I'm curious because I haven't gotten through the whole Denver game yet, Dan, but at the end of the day, Russell Wilson throws for 300 yards. They get 2 touchdowns nullified by penalties. They've got 5 plays of 40 yards or more. 3 of them are runs that the Dolphins have against this Denver defense. I'm feeling a whole lot better about, Buffalo's defense in this thing, knowing how they have been able to neutralize opponents' rushing attacks the last couple of weeks to get them in favorable down and distance to go hunt the quarterback. So, I don't know. I know Tua gets it out so fast, you rarely get hands on him anyway. I don't know. It's kind of hard to project because the Bills' defense hasn't played great quarterbacks the first 3 weeks. And by the same token, Miami hasn't played great defenses, maybe with the exception of New England the first 3 weeks. So it's kind of, I'm trying to get a gauge on this, and I'm having a tough time with it.
I would say this for Buffalo's offense, Miami's defense has not been super impressive. I agree with you, kind of watching the Denver game. Everyone, on TV right now is talking about the Broncos and, oh my gosh, Russell Wilson. They easily should have scored 35 to 40 points against Miami's defense. Easily. I think Miami's defense is in this row, Chris. How many, they're kind of okay. At least I don't want to say it in the way that they're okay getting scored against. I think their belief is how many different, they're just trying to gain possessions for their offense. They don't really care. They're trying to just, how many different times are they capable of getting the ball back for Tua? Because the offense right now is so explosive. And so I do think that Buffalo's offense absolutely can have success, but only if they remember kind of what they've done over the past 2 weeks and kind of the way that they've attacked defenses. Buffalo's defense is going to be challenged in ways that they have not by far all season.
Right.
By far. With the motions and the formations, it starts very simply with this, guys. How do they handle 21 personnel? two back, one tight end, because Alec Ingold. And remember, I told you guys the Raiders got into 21 and they got into it just to like run. The Dolphins get into 21 and it looks like 10, where it's almost 4 wide receivers out there. Or they'll get into 21 and they're all in these crazy formations and motions, and almost like watching Canadian Football League sometimes with some of the stuff that's going on. So just how they're going to handle some of the kind of unique formations and personnel groupings and how they're presented to the defense, they haven't been challenged that way. As much as I have a ton of respect for them, they haven't.
All right, so let me follow up on that. Do you think there is, so knowing it's almost impossible to stop it, is there a way for an opposing defense, whether it be the Bills or anybody else, to come up with a way to, at least for part of the game, dictate play to Miami with some kind of package, or if you get them in a down and distance, you can do this? I'm not asking you for an answer per se. I'm just asking, is there an answer out there where a defense, maybe even for a series or two, dictate to them and at least get a couple of punts off of them, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so New England did a good job. They did. You know what? Now, Christian Gonzalez, the corner for them, played fantastic in man coverage, and they very early down tried to double Tyreek Hill and said, well, Tyreek's not going to get the football, and they try to put hands on him at the line of scrimmage. Now that allowed Mike McDaniel to adjust in that football game and run the football a little bit. New England at times put 6 guys up at the line of scrimmage to try to discourage some of the quick passing. You know, Miami has this one play that they run like 127 times where like those stack receivers and they'll motion inside out full speed. And, you know, Tua just kind of reads the end man on the line of scrimmage. And if he goes with the motion, he'll throw a little slot hitch, or he'll hand the football off, or if the guy stays inside, he'll kick it out to the sideline right now. So New England kind of got caught in between there a little bit because they were stacking the line so much that horizontally they got spread out. I think like probably the two things is really, if you go back and watch the Chargers defense last year, and I believe it was on Monday Night Football, it might have been Sunday Night Football, but the Chargers defense did everything. They set inside leverage on basically every pass concept in man and back hip. And it was the dare of, over the course of the 4 quarters, are you going to throw the ball down the field and outside to perfect locations? And I think that's really difficult to do with some of the formations and motions, but that's the one defense in the last, it feels like 10 games against Miami that has had some type of success.
Yeah. Whenever we start talking about these offenses and how, you know, how prolific they are, and we see them once in a while where a team gets hot and, man, nobody can stop them. And then you start having conversations like this where the Bills, in order to beat a team like the Dolphins, or anybody to beat a team like the Dolphins, you need help. The defense needs help from their offense. You know, run the ball, 8-minute drives, be efficient, score when you get the chance. Don't punt the ball too often. Don't turn it over. You know what I mean? Take all the time you can and just limit their possessions. And I mean, that's like from the word go. And that's kind of stereotypically where we get with these conversations. When you have an offense that scores, 60 or 70 points, you start thinking, listen, if we want to beat them, we can't give them the ball that much.
Yeah, that's like the fascinating kind of, I guess, back and forth with this game, Steve, is so it's one of those games where you probably lean on maybe being a little bit aggressive on some 4th downs for sure. And it brings a conversation a little bit back to Josh. This is one of those games where you do expect Josh to be very aggressive with the football. And you do, and you can understand, unless the game doesn't play to a certain style, in an unexpected style. But remember, like last week when he kind of rolls out to his right and he throws that bomb down the right sideline, and I think it was to Gabe Davis, like crossing the field. You're going to need some of that wow stuff. Like you're in comparison to week 1, when it was such a, like the why are you doing that decision-making wise? When they can't score on our defense right now. It's not that. feel for this game. And this is one of those games where Josh is more than likely going to have to do some wow stuff. And there's going to be some plays where everyone goes, no, 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 no. Ooh, yeah, do that. And it's one of those games where you're going to have to live with that. It's different than week one. This does fall under the umbrella for me of like, okay, you're going to have to score 30 plus at least to win this game, likely. So this is where you sit there and go, well, if Josh makes one really like, what the heck are you doing play? And it hurts our football team, but it gives us 4 of like, oh my gosh, you're the only guy in the league that could do that. This is one of those games where you just live with that 1 or 2 boneheaded mistakes, or like you can't do those because he's going to need 4 or 5 splashes.
That's exactly what he did in week 14 last year. They're down 11 with 7 minutes left, and he basically puts the cape on and wins the game for him. I'm eager to dive a little bit more into the Fangio defense, Dan. You touched on it already, saying that, there are some times where they will be unusually aggressive. Is there anything else that sticks out through 3 weeks from that side of the football for them? I know Van Ginkel is playing inside more now. He used to be more of an outside backer for them, and he's in the middle, presumably to add some more speed in there at the second level, because they've been notoriously slow and victimized in there by teams, not just the Bills, but other teams over the last couple of years. Is there a soft underbelly here to the Dolphins defense that you see to this point?
I do think they have a favorable matchup with the tight ends in this game. I feel like I say that on a consistent basis, but I believe it to be true again this week, because I don't think that is – now, the challenge with Vic and the way that the Dolphins defense is playing is Vic doesn't give you easy completions.
Yeah.
And it's not in the aspect of – like the Jets are different. Like the Jets don't give you – the Jets will give you like 3-yard completions, 4-yard completions. They won't give you the 10-yard completions. The Dolphins under Vic and with some of the personnel that they have right now, they're not giving you, they're trying to not give you anything. They're trying to take away very much so the easy throws and challenge you to make the difficult ones. They don't want to give you free yardage. They're going to try to play very close to the shallow or kind of shorter completions and force you to kind of hold the football and throw it downfield and allow the safeties of Javon Holland to try to have vision downhill. And so I think the challenge for the pass game with Buffalo is going to be in the drop back world. I'm not talking about the play action world. In the drop back world is, how quickly and decisive Josh is going to be with the 12 to 15 yard throws. And then the placement in relation to where the defender is going to be huge, because the defenders will be close. Like these guys do a really good job of mashing pass concepts and playing the proper leverages. The placement of the throw in relation to where Miami's defenders are, that's going to be a big story for this weekend's game too.
Yep. So as this season rolls out, we're 3 weeks in, and you always think maybe a month in we'll start to find out who these teams are. There's maybe 3 or 4 teams, maybe 3 at least, that really don't like who they are right now. Denver, Chicago, Arizona, these teams that are, they're not who they thought they were going to be. They're particularly Denver on a week like this has got to be, on suicide watch. I mean, it's rough. It's really rough. What are your thoughts about this first 3 weeks of the season and how it's played out for you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's all that surprising. I think that the teams that we thought were, I guess that some of the surprising things for the early part of the season is, I think New England is a very solid football team. I do. If New England had any type of a vertical threat at all, I think they'd be a playoff team because of the way that their offense is efficient and the way their defense can get after you and the way their coverage is really good. I think if you look at Cincinnati, I called Monday Night Football last night with them. Everyone I feel is not everyone like writing them off. They are going to be very much so in the mix at the end. They just got to try and survive the next 3 or 4 weeks with the style of offense they have to play, and Joe kind of being with the calf, but they are going to be very much so right where they have been for the past couple of years. I think the Chiefs defense has been a surprise. How young they are. They are carrying the football team a little bit right now as this offense try to figure out who they are outside of some of the pieces that have been departed over the last 2 years. Jacksonville, I think, is going to be okay. I thought last week it was just a shoot yourself in the foot situation for them. I do believe that they're going to be okay. Indy's defense, their pass rushers are a lot better than I thought they were going to be. So that's a little bit part of that conversation. You know,
Baltimore.
not much of the NFC kind of impacts the AFC right now, but
Talk a little bit about Baltimore. What do you think from Lamar and how that's going over there?
A lot of injuries.
Yeah, Baltimore's a tough gauge right now because of those injuries. You know, if I took the left tackle for a ton of teams in the NFL and he doesn't play, it's going to have a negative impact on their offense. You know, so Ronnie Stanley's got to play, and until he does that, there's this like question mark about who Baltimore is consistently. You know, when you watch them play, everyone is saying like it looks like the same offense under Greg Roman. I would disagree with that. I think they're just still finding their footing. You know, there's to consistently get the pass game to be at the same time in the same field. There's multiple times where like Lamar goes to throw the ball to a player like a Zay Flowers and Zay takes 2 steps in and Lamar throws it where he expects him to be. So it's going to take I said it would take 4 to 6 weeks for them to really get the feel of the timing and the understanding of the pass game. And there's moments where it is and moments where it isn't. So I still think that offense is going to be very explosive as long as they get healthy on their front. Their defense is the concern for me because I don't know if I have a high end belief in their perimeter cover people, you know, and that's when in this conference, you guys know, like you got to be able to stop passing games. And I don't know if I have a ton of belief in Baltimore or in that regard right now.
Dan, thanks as always. Appreciate the insight. We'll catch up with you next week. This is going to be a good
Dan.
one.
Appreciate you.
Thanks so much, guys.